So good morning. I'm Maury Ruffin, the Managing Director of the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine, and I wanted to welcome you to day 2 of the meeting on the Mesa. It's also fitting that today is actually the International Stem Cell Awareness Day, which is recognized in about 7 countries around the world. So the timing of this is obviously perfect. We have another full program today, including a morning discussion and program on the regulatory framework for regenerative medicine. And we're going to hear from a couple of special guests. First, we will hear from Mr. Yoshide Asaki, who's the Director, Ministry of Economy and Trade Industry, METI, in Japan. And then he, in turn, will be introducing Mr. Yuzo Todo, Senior Vice President of Fujifilm, who's also the chairman of CIRM, ARM's counterpart in Japan. And they will discuss the regulatory framework for regenerative medicine in Japan, something we've been discussing over the last actually day and a half here at the meeting. And then following that, we have another special guest here from Washington, D.C., Celia Witten, who's the Director of the Office of Cellular Tissue and Gene Therapy at CBER, the FDA. And Celia is obviously someone well known to all of you. We had hoped she could be here last year, but because of the government shutdown, she wasn't able to be here. So we're delighted that she could join us this year. And then in the afternoon, in addition to the company presentations, we'll have our feature plenary session on gene therapy and gene-modified cell therapies, again, a topic we've been discussing over the last 2 days. And then wrapping it up this evening, we have our public forum, which is at the Sanford Consortium building next door, on the other just on the other side of the Salk Institute. And there we will hear from Dr. Carl June from the University of Pennsylvania, who will talk about their work with engineered T cells for a variety of cancers. So when we began ARM, it's now been almost 6 years that we've been doing this. So about 6 years ago was when we started the organization. Much of the discussion we had among the charter members was about how inclusive we should be as an organization. Who are the groups, the stakeholders, the constituencies we should strive to bring into this organization? And what we wanted to do was achieve a balance, because obviously to have a broad base of support is very important in terms of your advocacy, but at the same time, we also recognize the need for focus. And focus is obviously going to be essential if we have success in the sector. So I think you'll see from, again, the participation in this meeting that as we're growing from year to year, we are really enjoying tremendous support from across the board. We're seeing this, I think you heard Mark Stevenson yesterday in the opening session from Life Technologies talk about the growing interest in large pharma. We focused on that last year where we had a plenary panel featuring a number of the large pharma companies that are involved in this sector, where most of them said, and we put the question directly to them, you know, how engaged are you in regenerative medicine? And most of them said they were fully committed. We hope that this obviously will continue, and we'll continue to see a greater presence from the large pharma companies and the large cap biotechnology companies. We also have tremendous support from a number of other large companies like Thermo Fisher, GE, EMD Millipore, Lonza, PCT, just to name a few. Many of you saw them here this morning in the manufacturing roundtable that PCT hosted. Another growing presence within the organization we're seeing is with the major medical centers. So this is something that we've obviously heard about, with a lot of the attention being focused on the work, as I mentioned, of Carl June at the University of Pennsylvania, but Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, Memorial Sloan Kettering, all of these organizations are very active with us and actually members of ARM. Patient groups, another key constituency of ours, and I think you've heard us talking about the importance of our work with the patient groups and the patient community really from the beginning. And this is something we're going to continue to do. This is really the core part of our program in Washington, D.C. when we do our legislative day. And then lastly, I want to mention investors. So we are taking very seriously our role in increasing our outreach to the investor community. We have our New York Investor Day. We've just added a London meeting. This is actually going to be the second meeting of the AAT Investor Day, which we inherited as we merged the membership. But this will be in London this year. And I think this reflects, again, a growing interest in this sector. But the thing we need to remember is that the interest doesn't automatically translate into commercial and clinical success. So we really have to sustain momentum, and that's why a lot of the discussion over the last couple of days has been about our need for clinical successes, for data, and really to be able to demonstrate that these therapies, these technologies that we're delivering can actually do what we expect them to do. So that's why the gentleman I'm about to introduce next is thinking carefully about this all of the time in his role as the new head of CIRM. So CIRM is an organization that we have been working with for the last 6 years, really since the inception of ARM. We've had a tremendous partnership with them. They've been a co-host of this meeting for the last 5 years that we've been part of it. And we obviously hope to continue that partnership with them. So I'd like to hand the podium over to Randy Mills, the new CEO and president of CIRM, so he can update us on all of CIRM's activities. Randy?
Thank you all for having me here today, and thank you, Maury, for being very, very tall. No, I checked. He really is. He's really, really tall. And so that's good. We have that going. No, but thank you, everyone, for coming today. I'm going to try to keep my remarks as brief as possible, but I want to share some concepts that's going on with CIRM and with you, some changes that are going on, and more specifically that these changes actually may have significant impact on you in a positive way. So let's just jump into it. So just a tiny bit about CIRM. So we are the California Stem Cell Agency, or the Regenerative Medicine Institute for the state of California. We were created in 2004 by the passage of a bill called Proposition 71, which is interesting because it actually amended the California Constitution. And so we are now a constitutionally mandated agency, and that was done to protect CIRM from political forces. We actually became active in 2007 in a meaningful way, and that was because CIRM was originally challenged in the courts for the first few years. And we have about $3 billion in funding that we use for stem cell research and development and other sorts of regenerative medicine. But the real concept behind CIRM is that we drive the acceleration and development of stem cell therapies. So our mission, succinctly put, is accelerating stem cell treatments to patients with unmet medical needs. This doesn't have to be any more complicated than this. We like to take the stem cells that you see on the left and move them to patients in need, such as the young lady on the right. Actually, the young lady her name is Stephanie, and Stephanie is actually a stem cell recipient from the state of California. She, 3 months prior to this picture being taken, pulled a pot of boiling water down onto her face and burned literally half of her face off and had to be taken into surgery. And we used a stem cell product to reconstruct her, and that's a 3-month after picture. So I come to you not as a skeptic, I come to you as a believer, and I come to you as a believer who has seen. So let's go. A little bit about what CIRM's done so far. So we've given out over 600 awards so far, about $1.5 billion in funding we've committed. Our funding has generated over 1,700 peer-reviewed publications and discoveries. We've built around the state of California, and there's a beautiful one just down the street, 12 world-class laboratories that are dedicated specifically to stem cell research. We're also involved in education, so we have a whole other side of CIRM that does education work. We have 1,500 young scientists that have been trained. That's everything from high school through postdoctorate. We've brought in about $290 million in new tax revenue, And we have international outreach as well. So we're actively engaged in funding relationships with 21 countries outside of the state of outside of the country of California. Sometimes you mess up and it works better. So one of the things that at CIRM I thought it was really important to do was make sure we stayed focused and make sure we stayed true to our mission. And to do that, we came up with this 4-part test. And the test goes like this. Whenever, and this is an internal thing at CIRM, so whenever we're thinking about doing something, we ask these questions. 1, is this going to speed up the development of a stem cell treatment? 2, is it going to increase the likelihood of success of a stem cell treatment? 3, is it an unmet medical need? And 4th, is it efficient? And we use those tests, and we use that because the one thing for me, which there will be no compromise on, is CIRM is all about the patients. It is all about taking care of the patients, and everything else is subordinate to the patient. And so our mission needs to be strictly adhered to, in that we need to accelerate stem cell therapies to patients in need, because there are patients that have such incredible need out there. And we have, I believe, the potential to address that. And so that's what we're going to do. And with that in mind, so with that 4-part test in mind, we decided to take a look at ourselves first. And say, you know what, if we're going to lead by example, and we're going to look at our own processes and practices and see what we can do in order to directly facilitate our mission. So we've created this concept called Serum 2.0. We've been around for about 10 years. It's time for us to take a step back, look at the lessons we've learned, see what we can improve on, and implement those improvements. And that's what we're going to be doing. So the goal of this is to develop a process within CIRM for attracting, awarding, and administering grants that better serves our mission. If we're successful with this, we're going to see more high-quality applications. We're going to see faster approval times. Things that we do fund, we want to make sure they don't just get funded, but we want to see them get further down the road after their funding, ultimately into patients. And lastly, we want a system that's clear, that everyone understands, and therefore we can have as much participation in this as possible. Because again, if we're all about the patients, we want the best ideas and the best concepts, not just those people that have figured out how to work the system. And clarity then becomes a really important part of that. So this right now is the overall process. If you had an idea, so let's say you had an idea for a clinical program, and you wanted to have that clinical program funded by CIRM. Let's say you wanted to do a phase 1 trial for a stem cell therapy in some patient population. Right now, it would take you on average 22 months in order to be able to go through the process for us and get a funding decision, on average, 22 months. The problem with that is that if your therapy is the one that actually is successful and impacts patients' lives because it works, that therapy's coming to market 22 months later than it otherwise could have if we had been more efficient and quicker. The world I come from prior to CIRM, pediatric graft versus host disease, 22 months equals about 750 children who are dead. And to keep in mind the urgency of our actual customer here, I think is a good thing, because it drives some focus within our organization and hopefully within the organizations that we partner with. So we took a look at this process, and these are big awards, by the way. So the average award here that we're talking about handing out is something like $17 million per award. You come to us with a really good idea. If we like it, we're willing to invest a lot of money in it, and we'll do it multiple times too. I mean, if you have an idea and it does well in phase 1 and you need money for phase 2, we'll help you in phase 2 as well. So we're willing to put and invest significant sums of money into it. But what we want now in return for that is to make sure we have urgency and make sure we have quality. Because the goal here isn't to get these awards funded, they're to get treatments to patients in need. So I'm not going to get into how we do it, but on January 1st, we'll be launching what we call CIRM 2.0. CIRM 2.0 will reduce that 22 months to a funding decision of 81 days. A significant reduction in how we do business. The reason for that centers around largely, right now, the way we do business at CIRM is every once in a while we put out a call or an RFA, basically a request for applications. Hey, do you have a clinical trial do you want funded from us? We have a window that opens for that. We'll then take applications and that window closes, and then some time goes by, 12, 18 months, whenever, and then we decide to open that window up again. The way we're going to do it going forward is we always want a high-quality clinical trial. We always want to be facilitating high-quality clinical programs getting to patients. And so just like the FDA doesn't say, next July we're accepting INDs, CIRM will not do the same either. We'll say we are always accepting applications for these types of awards and go to a review cycle annually that looks something more like this. So we'll basically be every month accepting new applications, every month going through the review process, every month making funding decisions. So, and I promise I'll stop here, but January 1st, CIRM 2.0 is going to start, and sort of the key things that I think are important for everyone in this room to understand and take away is, one, now we're ready when you are. So you don't have to try to rush an application in. We're open. If you have an idea, get it ready and then apply to us. Similarly, don't apply to us if you're not ready, because your application is going to get kicked out. We're much faster. CIRM and Underserved 2.0, we're going to go from 22 months to 81 days. So things are going to get much, much faster. And for not just the patients, but for the business world, this is something that's far more accommodating. An 81-day funding decision on a $17 million grant is a pretty good deal. We are only seeking high-quality applications, though, and so applying to us should not be assumed to equal a foregone approval from us. We have an outstanding review process that we use. We use some of the world's leading experts to help us evaluate and make these funding decisions. We're only looking for the best of the best. But these funding opportunities are significant. As I say, these are $10 to $20 million funding opportunities. For businesses out there, there are very attractive programs. I'll just give you an example. One of our funding opportunities is a loan that if your program doesn't work because it didn't work, the loan's forgiven. You only pay back the loan if your product actually makes it to market. And you're probably not going to get that deal somewhere else, because I tried. And the one other point I want to make, corporate versus academic. We are working with both. We need to work with both. Great ideas, great science, great technology coming out of academia, commercialization coming out of the corporate world. CIRM is not a one or the other here. We are both, and we are open to do business with both. And lastly, this idea of do you have to be inside California or not inside California? We want everyone to come to California right up until we run out of water or room, whichever comes first, and it looks like it's water right now. But assuming we get our water problem fixed, we want everyone to come to the state of California. But if you're not in the state of California, that does not mean there's not opportunities for us to work together. There'll be more clarity put out about that in the coming months. But it's important to know that California is in the business of trying to accelerate stem cell therapies to patients, and if that technology exists outside of the California, we're still interested in doing that. We just want to make sure there's a clear and direct benefit for the state of California. So with that, as I promised, I will stop talking and thank everyone in this room for having to endure this, and Maury and everyone at ARM who is doing a phenomenal job in growing this agency. We look forward at CIRM to continuing our relationship, continuing working together so we can advance the field of regenerative medicine. Thank you all.